Welcome to Seizing Valor, where we discover God's path for manhood, one conversation at a time. I'm Joe.
And I'm Zack. And Joe, it is our season 1 finale.
I might shed a tear, but I also might travel back in time because today we're going to be talking about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Dude, I feel like that was a spoiler just in describing it. No. Come on, man. Well, so as I'm saying it, though, for those of you who have not seen the movie yet, I mean, you can totally just hear about our weeks, but warnings, there will be spoilers we will be talking about, and you can come back to it after you've seen the movie.
We've gone through a whole list of other films as well you can check out. I'll have it linked up here, especially the other Indiana Jones movies that have come out in the past. So, before we begin our discussion on the Dial of Destiny, thank you so much for joining us on Seizing Valor. We hope that you can't wait to see our Christian elements on this movie, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. If you enjoy this episode, please make sure to give a like, a comment, and hit the bell icon if you're on YouTube to receive notifications for any future episodes or future videos on our YouTube channel, pre-hiatus. You can also follow us on Spotify, stay updated with our latest episodes, and be sure to connect with us on Instagram for any behind-the-scenes stuff that we've got going on, any additional discussions, which I'm sure we'll have.
For everyone who's listening and has not stopped, I guess you already know that this movie is about time travel.
Yeah, you want to do a brief synopsis?
Me or you?
Whoever. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I guess I can give a brief synopsis.
Sure.
I'll try. You've done a brief synopsis on these last ones. Let me see if I can do this here. I did just see it 12 hours or 24 hours ago. All right. So we find our hero, Indiana Jones, currently in the year 1969. So we are still at the height of the Cold War, Vietnam, the moon landing. Lots of things are going on right now, but our poor old Indiana Jones is a little bit run down. We find out later in the movie his son has passed away because he went to the Vietnam War. He has a pending divorce with his wife, Marion. He's retiring from his job as an archaeologist. I mean, he's overall not the man. He's old. He's worn out. He's not the man he used to be. He feels alone. But in comes his goddaughter, Helena Shaw, who brings him into a plot to find the Antikythera, or also known as Archimedes' dial, which apparently supposedly has powers to not only predict astral movements, but to find fissures in time to allow one to go through them and therefore travel through time. So we go off on an adventure with Helena and Indy and Helena's sidekick, whose name was
Discount Short Round. Let's call him that.
No, we need to give him his proper name. I think it was Bobby. Is it Bobby? Hold on. Nope. We're gonna look this up. This kid did a great job. He deserves his character deserves recognition. You're gonna edit this part out, the searching part.
No, I like it. I'm keeping it in.
Teddy. I knew it ended with a Y. Teddy. My bad. His name is Teddy. Bobby, Teddy. No, well, Bob, yeah. Anyway, so Teddy, we find out, Helena is kind of a mixed bag of a character, so to speak, in terms of in terms of morality. She's in this partly, for the archaeology, for the finds, but also we find out that she's also into selling objects.
Some nefarious purposes, yeah.
For various purposes, to get herself out of debt, to get herself out of danger, to just make money. But anyway, on their heels are the Nazis, who are disguised in modern day America. Most importantly, he goes by Schmidt in the modern day, but he had a different name that I don't remember in the past. And he is also after Archimedes' dial so that he can go back in time and essentially depose Hitler and become the new Nazi ruler so that he can do everything more better and then win the war. So we, travel to Africa. We travel to the Aegean Sea, to Sicily, all in trying to find the pieces of this dial, as well as the graphic host, which describes how to use it. And eventually We are led through a fissure in time back to the days of Archimedes himself.
And this is the only place and time where the dial takes you to.
Exactly.
That's the twist.
It's a twist at the end of the movie because Archimedes created it to bring help to the Greek army, essentially, so that they could repel the Romans, which, spoiler, did not work. Because all he gets is like a handful of Nazis and Indiana Jones and Helena and Teddy and a few other people who are not going to be able to defeat an entire Roman army. Yeah. But it creates an interesting time loop situation. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, that's the basic gist of it. I mean, at the end, Indiana, after they are able to defeat the Nazis, while they're stuck in, I think it's 212 BC, he wants to stay. He wants to stay in history. He wants to, kind of run away from his problems, so to speak, in the past. But Helena kind of forces him to return back to modern day, and he is able to reconcile with Marion and kind of face the grief and the challenges that he had been avoiding. And it's a happy ending, relatively happy ending for all. A lot of things that we could touch on. This is so fun fact for everyone. This is the first of the Indiana Jones films that Steven Spielberg did not direct.
Yeah, we're directed by James Mangold, who also did, I think, 3:10 to Yuma and Logan with Hugh Jackman.
Mm-hmm. So he's kind of used to a veteran character send-off movie, so to speak, with Logan.
I would say that's true. However, like, my only gripe with it is that James Mangold seems to be more good at like the serious types of movies. 3:10 to Yuma and Logan are very good at that. I'd say in certain parts he's good about that with this movie. Indiana Jones, like especially like Last Crusade, really dial up like the humor. I'd say the humor doesn't really fall too well for the most part here, and I think that was one of his weaknesses in this movie as a director.
I would agree, but I am okay with it actually being a little bit of a gruffer,
more serious
movie, because I mean the time we find Indiana in is a gruffer time. Like that's the thing. We went from the idealistic times of like the 40s and then even into the 50s a little bit with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, where you dealt with a lot of like there was very much like the black and white, like the idealism. Mm-hmm. We get to the late 60s, especially during the era of Vietnam, like things become a little bit more uncertain, so to speak. I mean, like authority, there's situations in which authority has kind of failed the general public, so there's distrust there. Mm-hmm. There's still the Red Scare going on of this idea in the Cold War, where who's good, like who could be good, who could be bad, like there's a little bit, I don't want to call it, I don't like using the word always gray area morality, but like this idea of there is more of Indiana Jones is almost like a man out of time. I read this is supposed to be one of the themes. He's a man from an idealistic time in a non-idealistic world.
Yes.
So he feels very out of place. He should feel out of place. And I think a lot of older men can experience that towards the end of their lives. They, in your older years, you don't always necessarily adapt to the times, like you kind of are the way you are, and because that time of your life of adaptation and formation is kind of over, and you kind of are in some ways a relic of the time you grew up in. And I think a lot of older men can kind of feel that way when they get to this period in their lives, is that the whole world has changed and they're the same. This is an era in your life where a lot of your friends are gone, or like your family are gone because you're old and like they've passed away, and so
you mostly become by yourself.
Exactly. And we find Indiana Jones there at the very beginning. I mean, the one person that he has that's kind of with him, I mean, other than Salah shows up, but like other than him, like his only real companion is Marion, and we find out that they're separated at the beginning of the movie. And it's not just this, but he has the physical decline, which I think a lot of other men feel. It's like we are very physical beings, us men, and we are defined in what we do. And it's not a surprise to find a character like Indiana Jones, who is a very physical, action-based hero. Now he's at an age where he can't be really that physical, and so now he really doesn't know what to do with himself. Like he feels lost.
Yeah. So, like it said in the title, the dial it has the power to turn back time. You know, the villain desires to manipulate history for the Nazis. This all relates back to the theme of time, to manipulate history for the Nazis to win the war. And Indiana Jones, he wants this artifact to obviously kept in a museum. We know this about him, rather than to be used for nefarious purposes. But time, it comes for every person, right? And Indiana Jones, he's old and frail, like we mentioned before, and this archetypal hero of the past. He is forced to reminisce and reflect on the past, dark past, and these painful memories. And he and the villain actually share like a disconnect with the present and wanting to change the past too. So I get that there. Now, relating back to like the Bible in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 1, there's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. It's actually very funny because this takes place in 1969. This was brought about again. Ecclesiastes brought back to popularity, so to speak, in a way, in pop culture, because the Birds they took turn that took this from there. So I thought that's just in my mind, that's what I thought of. But yeah, life unfolds in different seasons. In Indiana Jones' case, time is meant to be experienced in the present, not in the dwelling of the past.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think what's really interesting is, and we'll be like overlapping themes a little bit here, but this idea is that they use time travel. So Indiana Jones doesn't use time travel he doesn't want to use the dial to change his own past, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And that, like, we don't have that typical situation of like, oh, the hero gets taken back into a time that he wished was different, and like he's given the choice of, do you change what happened? So we have like this scene in the middle of the movie where he talks about, so we find out that his son, Mutt, played by Shia LaBeouf, is dead because he was in the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. And he says if there was one thing that he could change about his past is that he would stop his son from enlisting. So he wouldn't die. Which, you know, never. But, and he has this conversation where he reveals that. But we're not given that at the end of the movie, like a lot of cliched time travel movies. Instead, we're taken back to the 200s BC and during the siege of Syracuse with Archimedes. And so time almost becomes this like escape for Indiana Jones, of like this idea of like at first we talked about, he's like running away from a lot of his problems back home. So he's like, he has the grief of his son that he's running away from. He's having these struggles with his wife that he's running away from. But most importantly, I think we touched on this idea of the feeling of being out of place. So it's very poignant in the beginning of the film. Like in the first few films, we have Indiana Jones in the classroom, and we have like people harping on his every word. Like, he is amazing. Like, the girls love him. Like, he's handsome and he's interesting. But in this movie, we have a classroom scene where literally everyone in there could care less.
And he's not really helping his case because he's very monotone, and he wasn't technically that way in the first and third movie, but I think it also has to do culturally, like not really accepting authority, or they're just there because they're there. So I think he doesn't really help his case, but still.
Yes. But it's a good contrast. Like, it's a symbolic contrast to showing that Indiana is out of place, out of time. Like, not out of time, but like, you know, he's displaced in time.
Yeah, it was so weird seeing him use a projector.
Well, I mean, that was the technology back in the day. So, but going back to the point of this idea that this opportunity that Indiana wants to stay in the past with Archimedes is a way of like feeling like he's this person who's studied history like all his life, and he like feels at home. He's like, this is what I know, this is what, like, I can be something, I can fit in kind of here, even though he really won't, because he's a modern man in the past. Like, so he actually won't, but he feels like he will, because it's what he's familiar with. He'll feel like he'll fit in more there than he will back home where he's supposed to be. Yeah. So it's like this running away from that displacement, or like wanting to feel useful, even though he's still a 70-year-old man. He probably would have died before that day was over, because the Romans were still going to win. Yeah. But
And primitive health care.
But this idea, well, yeah, he had been shot, so it's like he wasn't going to get better. But it's this idea is that Indiana is running away from these things that make him uncomfortable, and how often we do that as men. I feel like instead of like confronting certain things, and it's the thing, and I think this is also really important to point out, is that Indiana Jones has no issues running headlong with a horse into a tank, or he has no issues like I don't know, give me another example of jumping out of a plane in a raft,
or falling on a bridge.
or yeah, like all these things that involve, or like getting in a fight with like a guy twice his size, like all these things Indiana Jones is not afraid of. But when it comes to the non-physical things, we find, I mean, through a lot of these movies we've kind of figured this out, but more poignantly in this movie we find out that Indiana Jones is not as good at dealing with or facing head on the non-physical things in his life, the emotional things in his life, the mental things in his life. And that there is a level of that I think we as men can sometimes struggle with, that is that we are fine dealing with the physical as physical beings, but we sometimes are less inclined to deal with the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, maybe, that we're more apt to run away from that in the physical, or avoid it, or suppress it, or yeah. And I think that's an important theme here, is this running, this avoidance of dealing, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Particularly of grief. I think grief is like a big theme in this movie. Is dealing with grief, dealing with loss.
Yeah, in a healthy way.
Yeah, and not just of people. I think it's also just of Indiana dealing with the death of an age. The death of a time gone by, the death of his son, the death of a lot of the friends. Like, I mean, he's lost, by this point, he's lost a lot of people. I mean, we've lost, the more pictures that end up in the opening scenes, the more people we've lost. So yeah, it's coming to terms. I mean, and he's not the only one. Obviously, Helena has lost her father, and Teddy is an orphan. He doesn't have parents, and so there's a lot of people that have lost a lot of things here, and it's just about learning how to deal with all that. Like, what do you do when you lose something?
Yeah. I kind of want to go into the whole belief theme.
Okay, go for
it. So faith and science, and the spiritual in general, that's pretty much the bulk of what drives Indiana on all of these different or even the supernatural in all of these 5 movies. As an archaeologist, Indiana Jones is a man of science. But in a flashback scene, after his friend expresses a belief in the supernatural, Indy's challenging. He's like, you can't prove it. Proving is what makes it science. Now, years later, after seeing, Nazis dying, the Holy Grail, and losing that, aliens, he's reevaluating what he's seeing, and he's not religious by any means, and we've gone over this multiple times, but more agnostic, it seems, about the supernatural, especially when he was talking with Helena on the boat. Later in the film, it's he says it's not so much what you believe, it's about how hard you believe it. I remember you were telling me, Zach, that you don't really agree with that statement, and I concur. I agree with you there. So what do you think?
Well, yeah, so addressing first off what you were saying, I'd like to say finally we have a movie where Indiana is believing that some weird stuff can happen. For the first 3, I don't even really remember in Crystal Skull. Maybe I don't remember if he was like it, but this, I don't believe in that bedtime story. I don't believe in that hocus pocus or that hokum or whatever. Every time, and then by the end, something weird happens. And you're whoa. So finally, it's kind of sunk in that it's yeah, stuff can happen. I'm not going to stuff that I can't explain can happen. And he says that to Helena, and I'm sitting here in my seat being finally, finally Indiana Jones.
I've seen some stuff.
Yeah, I've seen some stuff. Or that we acknowledge that like weird stuff has happened in the previous films. But to your point, when you said, Joe, is like the tagline on this movie, I know it was used in the theater, in the trailers a lot, and I'm not sure if they were really trying to make it like a thing for this movie of it's not about what you believe, it's about how hard you believe it. I mean, as a Christian man, like I do not agree with that statement.
Yeah.
Mostly because it's a little bit relativistic.
Yes.
This idea is it discounts such a thing as truth. And that like what you believe does have to matter because there does have to be truth. Like there's no if what you believe doesn't matter, there is no truth.
Mm-hmm.
And we as Christians believe that there is a truth.
Yes, there's objective. Yep.
Truth, which is the Lord Himself, the way, the truth, and the life.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea is there are certain things. It implies that if I believe something hard enough that it's true, I can like all of a sudden I don't know. It's like I can't believe so hard that I don't know. I'm trying to think of something that I don't know, like a hamburger is going to appear like right here.
Yeah. Like
if I believe really hard, really hard, it's going to happen. Most likely it's not going to happen just because I believe it.
Yeah.
Circling back, this idea is it does matter what you believe.
Yeah.
And we as Christian men believe that it's important that you believe in God, like in the way, the truth, and the life. And I get like it brings Indiana up to a better place than he was, where he didn't believe in anything, really. So the fact that he respects belief in general is, I think, really important. But as we've kind of brushed on in these movies before, that Indiana Jones movie, like his journey has always been one of belief and not really one of faith.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the difference comes in here, is that statement that he makes is it's not about what you believe, it's how hard you believe. It is a statement of belief, but it is not a statement of faith.
Yeah.
And I actually would say it's not about it if you want to like redact it as Christians, I would say it's not about what you believe, it's about who you believe in.
Yes.
And in this point for us, it's we believe in Jesus
Lord.
Christ, our Lord. So yeah, I think it's really important. We brushed up, as I said, we talked about a lot in Raiders, I think, is for people when they look at this, it's like that's the difference, I think, between faith, belief, and then faith. Yeah.
So even though like Indy does seem to grow and accept that there are realities in the world that defy like the scientific, it does this kind of egregious relativistic understanding of truth, which is where our gripes were. I think like it had a step in the right direction, but like with the finagling of that tagline, I think it would be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily mind the whole like idea of taking a scientific approach with this stuff, because science is just the way in which God works in the world. Like science is not the opposite of faith. Like science is just explaining how certain things come to be. I mean, everything, the way it operates in the world is ordained by God. Like God, even the normal stuff, like God made a system in which the things happen that way. Like the fact that my body takes in oxygen and gets energy from that and expels carbon dioxide, that's something God created.
Yes. The water cycle.
Exactly. And it's a miracle in and of itself. It's not an extraordinary miracle, but it is a miracle in a lot of ways. So I really don't mind that. I actually kind of appreciate sometimes when that's kind of put in there, and it's not just that happened because it happened. So, and I think it was done well enough, like the concept, like, this, it wasn't a time machine. It was like, there's sometimes these gaps in time where you can kind of just like fall into a different time. And this is just a device to locate it. And I'm like, okay, I could believe that. I'm not sure if it's scientifically true. It's probably not, but like it's believable enough.
Yeah.
So I think it was a better way. I think it was better than what they tried to do in Crystal Skull. Like I think it was a better way to kind of not make it so supernatural. I am personally very glad we did not end up in Nazi Germany at the end, and then we had to do like the whole like. It would have just been really weird. It would have been.
I would have expected, a young Indiana Jones and an old Indiana Jones, like kind of teaming up. That's what I was expecting. But then it went off the rails with this. They can only travel back to the 200s BC at the Siege of Syracuse. That's the one time in the movie I really perked up my head, just because of the sheer absurdity, insanity of it all.
I mean, there would have been a level if they ended up what their mission would have been if they had gone back to 1939 is they would have had to try to save Hitler, which would have been just so strange. Like it would have been just a weird plot thing going on. But I thought it was very interesting, like going back in time to 212 BC and having that plot, like that plot twist of like this was always just meant to come back here. And I'm like, that's so brilliant on Archimedes' standpoint, though. How disappointed must he have been and be like, we need help, come back, get like an old guy and a lady and like a few soldiers that end up dying, and it's like, well, that's not going to help us.
It was so weird seeing like all those spears hit the plane and just a bunch of Nazi soldiers just shooting at a bunch of Romans.
Yeah. But I don't know. I thought it was an interesting. It was an interesting twist. Mm-hmm. I wasn't sure. I'm like, I wasn't sure what I was thinking. I was like, do I really want them to go back in time? Is that gonna like make this movie better or not? But then at the end, I'm like, well, now they got to. Like, I feel like they have to do it now, or else.
Yeah, like in the past, like I feel like other movies would just try to stop them at the last minute before they go to back in time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, because in the past, all the artifacts in the other movies, all the artifacts do what they're supposed to do. Yeah. Like, that's the thing. Like, they all end up doing what they're supposed to do. And there is still the underlying theme from the other movies of, like, what happens when you try to play God. Like, when you try to take power for yourself. There's even, at the beginning, in the intro, Schmidt, or whatever his original name is, says about the one who has the Antikythera is God. Which is, once again, that theme, like trying to control the future, trying to control powers beyond what you should.
Yeah.
And trying to be God, take the place of God. Now, obviously, Schmidt gets his comeuppance, not really in the same way that the others do, where like the actual artifact like kills them, like or whatever, or like overpowers them. It's just like things didn't turn out the way he expected, which you could say is kind of like, God's will never, turns out exactly the way you want, or it's just like it's that hubris almost, or like that fate ending up wrong.
Right.
But it's more like the thing. It doesn't run as strong in this movie because in the end it just looks like Archimedes got the better of him more than like it was like God or some other supernatural power being putting him in this place. Still, he learned his lesson. Well, I mean, he did, but he died. But like he got the lesson right before he died.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I feel like there was another movie. Oh, another theme I feel like that's a little poignant in this movie is obsession.
Huh, okay.
So this idea, they talk a lot about Shaw, whose first name I do not remember, like Helena's dad. So we have the intro. We didn't really go over that, but there was the intro to the movie that talks about how Hitler and Shaw were both in Nazi Germany, like right at the kind of the fall of Berlin, and they were trying to rescue the lands of the Spear of Destiny, essentially, the lands that pierced Christ's side that Hitler wanted to use to, empower his army so that it could fight back. Very on par with like old Indiana Jones. Mm-hmm. And they have this big, long, extended sequence, like on a train and everything, and like so much more, like big action sequence. But during this time, we talk about that's when they discover the Antikythera, and they're able to kind of salvage it. And Jones gives it to Shaw, so to kind of as a keepsake, but then Shaw kind of becomes obsessed. It's almost like he kind of caught the obsession from Schmidt, who was also obsessed. Obsessed with this dial and its abilities and what it could do, and to the point where it kind of ruins his life a little bit. Like he becomes obsessed. He can't seem to not think about it. Or he can't see, like it's almost like a Lord of the Rings moment where he has to give up. There's a later scene where he has to give it to Indiana Jones so that he can destroy it, even though Indiana Jones actually doesn't destroy it. But because it's ruining his life. Like
Yeah.
it's taking up all of his thoughts, like his time, his daughter's being neglected because of it. So this idea is
It's
that
very much a parallel to Sean Connery.
yes, I actually did want to point that out. Like this, I think there's a line in the movie where Indiana asks Helena, it's like, why would you want to go after the object that drove your dad mad, essentially? And then she turns back and asks him, wouldn't you? And that's the irony. It's like, because that's exactly what happened in Last Crusade.
Yeah.
Because Indiana goes after the Holy Grail, this thing that his dad was obsessed with, and like he had less of a childhood. So there's a little parallel there between Helena and Indiana, that they both had these fathers who were obsessed with these particular relics with power, and to the point where they weren't parented very well because they were busy being obsessed over the thing. And I think that's a really poignant for especially fathers, but for us all as men in general, because I mean, all of us as humans even have a tendency to become obsessed with things. We have whether they could be just innocent things, whether it's like sports or certain hobbies, or maybe even just getting attention, or it could be any of these like innocuous things. It could also be sin, stuff like pornography or things like that. You can obsession is very parallel to addiction, and both of those things can be very detrimental to us as humans, and especially when we become parents, or like in our case fathers. Like these obsessions can really be harmful not only to us and our own well-being, but to the people that are in our care, because it takes us out of our calling and kind of traps us somewhere else.
Yeah, it takes us out of the destiny that God does have in store for us, because the world is going to do whatever it can. The enemy is going to do whatever he can to deter you from your destiny. Can't necessarily control you, but can certainly distract you.
Absolutely. And I know I suffer from this. There are certain obsessions that I have, or certain distractions I find in my life that I know in the long run are not like necessarily part of my destiny, or part of what God is calling me to do, or just kind of side things that are for fun, but maybe take way too seriously or think way too much about them. And they take me out of what I'm supposed to be doing. Like it really does. Like even when you are not doing that, like certain sports or something like that, it's like even when you're not doing it, like when you're supposed to be working, you're like thinking about it and obsessing over it, and like all these different things. So like it really much can take you out of what you're being called to do, which is dangerous. It's not necessarily saying that we can't like things, or like we can't be invested or passionate about something, but there's a fine line between that and obsession, and we have to be very careful as we trod that line, or else it turns into the ring, essentially, for all of us. Once again, a very Schmiegelish moment there. You got to give it to me. And then, of course, he doesn't destroy it, just like in Lord of the Rings. He actually does not destroy it. Like he says, I will destroy the dial. And then he doesn't destroy the dial, because power does that to people.
Yeah.
And
doesn't he keep the dial at the end of the movie?
Well, the thing is weird. What I was actually expecting was, I was wondering if it was going to be like they bring the dial to the past and Archimedes never actually invented it, and they just give it to Archimedes.
That's what I thought. Yeah,
that's a casual loop situation.
Yeah, but that whole uncanny Back to the Future type thing creates a paradox, whatever.
Yeah, it's called a casual loop, like when an item, like when you don't know when something was introduced, because it's like being caught in this loop and you don't know where it's like, was it from the future or from the past? Like we don't.
Yeah, it's very much like a Terminator 2 type thing when you go to the past, like who actually created the I know what you mean.
So, but that didn't happen. There was an actual like dial, and they did send the one from the future back to the future, though they never say what happened to it. But at least it doesn't have the world-ending properties that they thought it did. It's just, if anybody wants to go back to 212, I was also thinking this, like during the movie, like if Hitler had in the story, if Hitler had gotten like his hands on the entire thing, like what would that have been like if like an entire German army had gone back to this siege of Sicily. Like, I mean, the entire Nazi army. Obviously, they would have been able to turn the tide, and then what would have history turned into? You know, the Nazis ruling from the 200 BCs, and whew,
thankfully not.
That would have been a mess. But yeah. So in the end, who knows what happened to the dial? But I will say that actually the disappointing, I know we're bouncing all over the place, everyone, please forgive us, but I will say the most disappointing thing I experienced was that Antonio Banderas did not have more screen time. That he was like and then dead. Like
right when he said Indy, and I could immediately recognize him. I said to my girlfriend I was watching, he's gonna get killed.
Like such a big name, and he was just killed right in the middle. Like even at the beginning where it was like, oh yeah, they killed all of his men, those poor expendable extras, and which like there are certain times, like I think when like they took the boat, they killed everybody but the kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why didn't they kill the kid? Like, why didn't they kill Teddy? Like, why did they kill everybody else on the boat but not Teddy?
Well, it's interesting that you point that out with Teddy. Why didn't they kill him? I love it's just I don't know what to think of this, but I can't help but laugh. He gets kidnapped, and they don't say this, but they said, screw him. And then they go right to finding the dial or whatever they were going to do afterwards.
Yeah,
they forget about him.
Well, they say it's like, oh, the best thing we can do is to like get it before they do. And I'm like, okay, that makes some logical sense.
It doesn't seem like an Indiana thing. I feel like he would like go rescue Short Round if something was, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I will say, okay, so speaking of that, I think there was a lot of good callbacks to a lot of the other movies in this movie. So like the idea of Teddy is kind of like a Short Round, in a sense, that sidekick that brings out the better half of their partner. So like Teddy does bring out the better part of Helena. Like he brings out the better person in her. That care, that like that relation,
yeah, because she's a very smug person, and then gives her a little bit of humanity.
Yeah, like makes her a good, like, I don't want to say mom figure, she's not that old, but like big sister type of figure, which I think was good. We have like the callback. The entire plot was pretty much like Last Crusade, like this following after the thing that the dad was obsessed with, and you got to go find the tomb with the thing that tells you where to find the other thing, and then you go and then you find the thing. Like it was very much the same plot as Last Crusade in terms of like play by play. Obviously, the whole beginning was a good callback to Raiders and a little bit Last Crusade too. Like obviously the Nazis like being the main enemy, because we always have to do a Nazi movie, other movie didn't work, back to Nazi movie, other movie didn't work, back to Nazi movie. So there was that callback, which I think was and then as I said, the beginning intro, very Indiana Jones-esque in Germany, like with the castles and the idea of like the Lance of Christ. Very much similar to like Christian artifacts like the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail. So it brought in a lot of good classic Indiana Jones type of elements, I think, and a lot of good callbacks. And obviously we have the actual direct callbacks. We have pictures of previous characters who are present. We have, as I said, the classroom scene at the beginning, which was different but meant to be a contrast. What I did like about this was that every Indiana Jones movie is like Indiana plus like a female character that kind of accompanies him.
Yeah.
What I really liked about this movie is that we got a different look at that, because every time it's been like Indy plus like a romantic interest, like, so it was Marion or Willie or Elsa.
Yeah.
And Marion again, which was good. Like a lot of those were good. Like it was good, and especially the ones with Marion, I think were good. Good adventures. Good character development between them. But I really like that we got to see a non-romantic interest. So this is like someone who's like, it's his goddaughter. So it's like more someone who's his junior that he's looking after, that he has a different kind of relationship with.
And remember how we talked about how Indy in the past has objectified girls? Now we have a girl that objectifies guys.
That's true. But at the same time,
it's very much a parallel.
Because we're focused mostly on him. there's not really any of that in this movie. For one, obviously he's an older man, so there's
Oh
not.
yeah,
It's not
no
really
need,
about that for him
no
anymore.
need.
And this idea is that we can have this duo where it doesn't have like, and we can, and it's quite a successful and I think entertaining duo between the two of them without there having to be any sort of romantic anything. I think, and obviously there is the subtle passing of the baton to like a Helena. You know, she does take a charge a lot in this movie, and she does fill a role that a lot of roles that previous Indiana filled before. So this idea is like she's the one with the sidekick. She's the one who's actually doing a lot of the physical stuff because, you know, Indiana's old and she is not. She's the one who's kind of initiating the search. She's the one with the father who was obsessed with the thing that she's going to go find. So it is like a passing of the baton. And I like that. I don't know. I thought it was really good. I thought it was good to look at a different male to female relationship, because we all have a lot of male to female relationships in our lives. It's not just us to our girlfriend or their wife. It's we have a relationship with our daughters. We have relationships with our mothers. We have relationships with our nieces, or we have relationships with female friends. We have relationships so there's a lot of different male female relationships out there. So see a different one, I think was nice. I think it helped develop Indy's character.
Sure, I get what you're saying. And I think the parallel between that and Last Crusade, in theory, is good. I would have to say that Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, who is introduced as Indy's goddaughter, she's very spunky, self-sufficient, or at least claims she is, but she's made to be wisecracking and at the same time smug. At the same time, Indiana was that when he was younger as well. Problem is, I think it was a little bit too much of a bait and switch type thing, because it does say in the title, Indiana Jones. Granted, old age, I get it. Part of the problem is how frequently he feels like a side character in his movie. I came here to see Harrison Ford, particularly in the middle act. But that being said, I get what they were trying to do, and I would have to say that the dynamic is okay for the most part. I got no gripes acting wise. Yeah.
So I'm gonna be a little differing opinion here, my friend. Not in the I did like the duo. I already said that, but I was okay with Indiana Jones being a side character in a lot of ways, because we talked about this beforehand, but before we started recording, because I'm glad that Indiana Jones, for the most part, looked like a 70-year-old man trying to have this adventure, because
he uses mind. He uses mind a lot more.
Or he struggled a lot physically, he did. And that's what I did not want out of this movie. I did not want a 70-year-old Indiana Jones doing all the same things he did from when he was 30, which was kind of a little bit what it was like in Crystal Skull, but he was still only in his 50s then. But it's I did not want to have an old guy going out and doing everything that James Bond does, for example, because it's that's not life. That's not. I would have been sitting there being, this is crazy ridiculous. No, that's you would not have been able to do this. And
I get that you would feel insulted that way.
Well, I like that they had the one scene where where he's struggling to climb the wall, and he talks about I've been shot 9 times. I had to drink the blood of Kali or whatever that. And I was tortured by voodoo, and I broke however many bones, and both my shoulders are bummed. And I'm yes, that's a 70-year-old man.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. He's still having the adventure, but he's struggling. And he needs help, and that's fine, because that's the way it should be. Because every man needs to get to the point in his life, at the end of your life, you need help. You do, because you can't. I think a lot of older men need to and I know we're going to get there eventually, but I think a lot struggle to accept help, because you're used to being self-sufficient for a long portion of your life, and then there's a level of you get to the point where you need help. And we can't all go out on our own, guns blazing, and so I don't know. I think that was a really important thing for Indy, is this idea is that he needs to accept his own mortality and accept help. And I think that was important. I still think the Harrison Ford Indiana Jones-ness still came through pretty well. He did consult a lot on this movie and how it was written, and the story arc for Indiana Jones. And I think that came out really well. And I think it was good. this idea of legacy. You know, I think they tried to do that in the previous movie, and maybe it didn't go off so well because they still made him too competent for an older man. And this idea is that I must decrease, he must increase. That's about God. But like, you know, this idea of like, in order for the next generation to come to fruition, like you have to take a step down. Like, and that Indiana Jones can't be Indiana Jones forever. Like, just like how in James Mangold's other movie, Logan, Wolverine, even though Wolverine is practically immortal, Wolverine can't be Wolverine forever. Like it's
well, so since we've like referenced back Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny, obviously based on what we're talking about, these are the two inferior movies compared to the three previous.
I wouldn't say that. I think a few of them are better than Temple of Doom, but just saying, Temple of Doom is actually probably my least favorite, to be perfectly honest.
Temple of Doom is great moments, competent, if I'm being generous. I'm thinking of the more memorable moments, like the bridge scene, the first heart opening scene, and that's pretty much it. Maybe the saving the kids, the mine cart, not so much. Among
no, it was memorable. I'll remember the mine cart. I mean, just
all of Willie, memorable, but not in the best of ways. Anywho, what would you say is a better film, Crystal Skull or Dial of Destiny?
It's a tough one, actually. I would say, I think in terms of overall message, character of development, I probably would say this one. I think I would pick Dial of Destiny over Crystal Skull. Now, in terms of like popcorn entertainment value, a little bit more Crystal Skull, but that was, you know, we're talking about, as we said, Indiana is not taking an action-packed route here. He's taking an older, wiser, you know, it's more character-driven, I feel like, in this movie. I feel like there is a better character arc. A little bit better action in Crystal Skull, but a little bit better of a character arc here. I did really like the open, and like they still had that opening that was like very reminiscent of the old Indiana Jones movies, which was not short. It was like a 25-minute long opening. So I think I liked this ending. I think it was a believable ending, and I would probably pick this one.
I get what you're saying. The realism of the ending, plus also the classic feel of the intro. I would have to say that my thoughts on the beginning half of Crystal Skull is better than this entire movie. But I would have to say that Crystal Skull in the back half of that movie just goes off the freaking wall. That I wouldn't say the same for Dial of Destiny. I would say I prefer that over the sheer absurdity of Crystal Skull's ending, and talking about the theme of knowledge is all that you need and stuff like that. So I'm a little bit mixed in the middle. Right now, I would say Crystal Skull is just like a hair more, just because I thought it was a great send-off for Indy. You know, he has his fatherhood, and he's also got the woman that he finally like embraces after running away, because that theme came up. Running away from her and finally embracing, like, okay, this is my woman.
Yeah. And I will say, I mean, we both talked about this a little at the beginning, that it was a little bit like when when it showed that he was divorced, like at the beginning, he was in the process of getting a divorce. I think both of us were very frustrated about that, because we thought Marion was a very good man. And it was like the best part of Indiana Jones was Marion, and they were getting rid of that, which for the sake of the story needed to happen to like help develop Indy. And they do get back together at the end, and which is fantastic.
Nice callback to Raiders with the kissing of the elbow reversal.
And because Marion is awesome, and like she did make Indiana Jones a better person. So it's really weird. But like this idea, I mean, the thing is, the complication doesn't surprise me though. Once you see the whole movie, it's like he was running away from commitment from before. So when things got tough, he ran away again. That's not that surprising. I mean, it's not like it was a little tough. It was like, this was a big big complication. Like this was a big difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I don't know. I think this ending was a lot more well earned. It felt like Indy earned this ending. Like he went through and like actually intentionally was able to overcome a lot of things or had to address a lot of things. Where I feel like a lot of things maybe kind of just through the plot fell into his lap a little bit in Crystal Skull.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I am grieved that Shia LaBeouf's character passed and was not in the movie, and that his death was used as a plot device, because I actually really liked Mutt. I liked Mutt in that movie. I was hoping that he would kind of continue on, but it is what it is. And I mean, once again, and that was real life back then. Like how many kids or how many young men Mutt's age like died in the Vietnam War? Like it was
the idealistic worldview.
And there were a lot of people like Marion and Indiana who had to deal with that grief. Like it was a time of a lot of loss.
Yeah.
So I think it fit into the time period. Like, so yeah, I don't know. And I will say, like, I'm not as much probably of a super Indiana Jones fan as you are, because I look at the last two movies and be like, yeah, that's more my style of movie that I want to watch than the first three.
Yeah.
But you know, it's to each their own. Like who thinks? I think maybe the overall like quintessential Indiana Jones, like obviously Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's that's where it's at. But I don't know. The style was much more up my alley. I feel like with this one. I mean, I'm okay with the toned down humor, or I'm okay with the. Oh, I will say, for everyone who's listened to every other episode so far, always knows that Zack has gripes about the physics within Indiana Jones and what's possible and what's not. Other than the fact of traveling through time, as far as we know right now, is not possible. But I had far less gripes about the physics in here. There was not a whole lot of things that looked like it's like, oh yeah, that's ridiculous. The one thing, none of it was like, I feel like impossible. The handful of things. One was I already talked to you about, like the idea when they're on the train and they bomb like the gun, and the gun all of a sudden gets turned and gets stuck on fire, and they just happen to be going around a turn, so it like eliminates all the Nazis that are chasing after them. All right, that's way too convenient. Yeah. And then two, the horse through the subway, like that was like a real, like it could happen. Like you could get a horse to do all of that. But I'm like, the horse didn't even hesitate. I'm like, oh, jump on the platform. Oh, okay. Yep. Oh no, there's a train coming. I'm not freaking out. Like, it's just... I
will say you are forgetting the worst offender of them all.
What was that?
On the flashback.
The scene, like when he keeps avoiding being hung, like or the bomb just conveniently showing up and
no. The fact that our main villain didn't get a scar on his face.
Oh yes, we did talk about that. He got like the train has to be going like 35, 40 miles an hour at the least, and this guy gets knocked like senseless off the train, goes flying like straight in the head from like
you would get decapitated. You would get decapitated.
He would have a broken neck. And yet he shows up in the modern day, not a single scar on him. He looks exactly the same, just old. Like, I was expecting, like, they even kind of came in on him, like, with, like, only half his face. I'm like, oh, that half of his face is going to be, like, you're going to tell that it's, like, either repaired or, like, it's messed up. Or he's just going to have plastic surgery, and it's a completely different looking guy. And then we're going to find out at the end that, nope, same guy. Same guy.
I'm Archimedes.
Wouldn't that have been a plot twist? If Indiana Jones was like Archimedes,
I would probably put this over Crystal Skull if they did something bold like that.
I'm like, and I still can't come back to the fact that like how disappointing that must have been for Archimedes. Like I got an old 70-year-old man. I wanted people to send like an army to help me, and I got this 70-year-old man.
Conjured.
Thank goodness he can speak Greek, right? Like.
Yeah. Right.
But. Yeah, I feel like I'm trying to think. I don't think there was really any other physics things that I was like, yeah, that's way off base. I think the horse thing was the only thing I was shaking my head. Not because it was impossible, but because I'm like, that's so like, I find it hard to believe that a horse would do that. It is a police horse, granted, so it was probably trained to be able to deal with a lot of things. But yeah, I don't know. That was one of those things where I'm like, yep, they put that in there because this is an Indiana Jones movie. Which, by the way, they also had 2 like car chases within this entire.
There were a
thing.
lot of chases. Yeah, I wish they dumbed down and didn't have as many chases and just took out basically a half hour of the film. It was just very overlong.
What is this? A Jason Bourne movie? Just
yeah.
For anybody who's watched The Bourne Identity, that's like a staple. You got to have an intense car chase. Yeah, but overall, I will say it was worth the money that I paid to see it. I think once I got warmed up and I was into it, I thought I was pleased. I was pleased with it. So yeah. There we have it, folks. Indiana Jones 1 through 5. As far as we know, that's it. Disney seems to say that's it.
I hope so.
Harrison Ford seems to say that that's it. So
Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. Don't give me any more.
I think that's what he said. He said I am Indiana Jones. They're not recasting me. And
good.
Though you did point out that there is a little bit of some parallels to Han Solo all up in here, but in like Star Wars set what do you call it? The Force Awakens.
Do you remember when they did like back in the 90s? They had a show, The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles or something. I really hope they don't do that.
Yeah, never watched it, but I mean, I wouldn't put it past them to do like a Disney Plus series or something like a few years from now with like not Indiana Jones himself, but with like a similar character that exists in the same universe. Maybe more modern day. Like, so that's the thing about the Indiana Jones is they're always kind of in the past. We never quite caught up. Like, we never quite got to our present day. I guess then you'd have to name it National Treasure. We never quite got to, we're always like a few decades behind, like with Indiana Jones. But, so who knows? Maybe they would do something like that. Maybe they would bring in, a character and just have kind of more, maybe it's like the his son's dead, so that wouldn't work. Maybe it's like the great grandnephew or something of Indiana Jones, or I don't know, and he's something like that, and he hears of tales of Indiana Jones and decides to go off on adventure and find stuff himself. And there's plenty of weird artifacts through mythology and history that they could still use as MacGuffins.
For sure.
But
let it die for a little while. Just let it rest for a little while.
Hey,
give it some time.
I might be controversial for saying this, but I think there's a lot of Star Wars TV content out there that's better than the movies. Not all of the movies, but most of the movies. Anyway, let's talk about the story of us, Joe. How was your week, sir?
I've just been very busy. I started up teaching summer school. I usually work with high schoolers, but I've worked with kindergartners through third graders right now, which is definitely a plot twist for my life. If somebody was looking at it from a movie perspective, movie critic, they're like, oh, he's working with the younger kids.
Are you the kindergarten cop now?
I am the kindergarten cop now. Shut up! Yeah, so that's been a nice change of pace for a little bit. Enjoyed 4th of July with my girlfriend a couple of days ago. Spent some time with my family. What else did I do? Yeah, just playing guitar for worship. There hasn't really been too much. It's been a little bit same old, but I've needed a lot of Joe time, but there hasn't been enough, even though I had a weekend to myself practically. I just had a lot of paperwork to do to like just get to know the students before actually knowing them, starting summer school. So that took a whole hunk of time, but all's well. I'll have another weekend hopefully to myself, so that'll be lovely. Excited.
Awesome. Cool beans, man.
How about you?
Well, let's see. It's been quite a busy weekend from me. On Friday, celebrated a few friends' birthdays in Scranton, so we had a little shindig for them. So a lot of friends coming down. So it was good time, good food. Played some games, played some cornhole. Me and my best buddy, we lost a very close game of cornhole. It was epic, other than the fact that we lost, but it was still epic. And so we got to spend some time there. Then the next day, so this was like a whole weekend in Scranton actually, and so then the next day we celebrate somebody else's birthday because we have friends that are very close together in birthdays. So
you redeem yourself with cornhole.
No, we did not play cornhole at that one. Well, before that, me and my one buddy, we went golfing, which was a good experience. Luckily, it didn't rain on us. But you know, we had a good fun time just getting out there, hitting the links. Then we for the next person's birthday, we did escape rooms. So the first thing we did is we did two separate escape rooms. We had a group of 3 and a group of 4. I was in the group of 3. And we went into one escape room, and I don't mean to brag or anything, but the other group didn't escape at all, and we got escaped with like 20 minutes extra.
Nice.
Saying. We were waiting for a long time.
You had the same puzzles?
No, they were different, but they were rated the same, like in terms of like escapability. So, and then we decided we had like a lot of time still, so we're like, let's do another one. So we all 7 of us got together and did like a bigger one. But we got out. We did get out. Not as early this time. It was like 7 minutes left or something like that. They're always an hour for anyone.
Still impressive, yeah.
Thank you. This one was a little bit more difficult. And sometimes, I mean, I've done a lot of escape rooms with a lot of different people. Me and my brother actually used to be kind of really into them a few years ago. But the thing you find is that sometimes there's too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Like it can not go well. Or you have like. This didn't necessarily happen in our group, but I know it's just a funny trend sometimes. You have people who've never done escape rooms before, and they're going like, I'm pretty sure this is important. They're like pointing at something, and like if you've done it like a lot, you're like, no, that's not important. Just stop looking at it. And it's like, no, I'm pretty sure. It's like, no, it's not.
You fixate,
and then at the end, you just let them just keep trying to figure it out, and then by the end, you get out and they figure out that it wasn't important, and it's anyway. It's good team building exercises for anybody who's ever considering it. And it really reveals kind of like what role you take on the team. Like your team leader will probably come out within minutes. Nope, I'm like, you do this, you do that, you do this. Like, there's usually a take charge person that kind of comes out of the woodwork. But anyway, we're not talking about team building here. We're talking about my weekend. And then we went and we had dinner at the good old-fashioned TGI Fridays, which I don't know what it is about TGI Fridays. They must be really proud of their whiskey glaze, because they literally put that stuff on everything. It's like literally half the menu is like whiskey glazed chicken, whiskey glazed burgers, whiskey glazed wings, whiskey glazed fries, whiskey glazed desserts, maybe. I don't know, but like...
I haven't been to Fridays since like 2015.
It was good though, I'll tell you. I mean, like I'm like making fun of them for this, but the whiskey glaze, it is good. It is good. But yeah, so we went to Fridays on a Saturday. And
I thought they were only open on Fridays.
Apparently they said one thing, like apparently there's like steak and lobster available on the menus, but it's supposedly only on Fridays, but in actuality it's actually available every day. They just say that. So our waitress told us that. Nobody got it. We're not rolling in dough. So, and then we just kind of hung out and played some games, at somebody's house. And yeah, then the next day got up. This is the first time I had promised my one friend that we would go see Across the Spider-Verse. I had been waiting to see it. I had been avoiding. I decided not to see myself because I'd go see it with this friend. And this was like the one time I was in town. So this was the first time in my life I've ever seen a movie before noon. Like we went at 9:30 in the morning, which I didn't even know movie theaters were open at that time. We saved a lot of money, and by a lot I mean like $3. But like, it was so weird to like go to a movie after breakfast. I mean, it was an experience.
I like that.
Movie was still amazing though. I had the whole. I'm not used to walking out of the theater though and it being light outside, and having to eat lunch. I don't know, but it was a really good movie. Really appreciate it. We're not here to talk about that movie though, so I won't go into details. But it was a fantastic movie. And then just got off of work early on Monday. Didn't get the day off, but got work early on Monday, and then celebrated with some of my swim team members on our masters team. We kind of had a little get together at somebody's house, and then we went to the local park to go see the fireworks, and there's a lot of fireworks displays in Harrisburg. But this one, which was near where I live, it was the night before. So very impressive firework, I will say. Top notch. Thank goodness it held off the rain until after they were over. And then and then the fourth was just kind of pretty laid back. I went to do some tennis stuff, and then other than that, I went to see Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny to celebrate our good old America. Which I could hear fireworks actually going off like in places around the theater, like while we were watching, but it was fine. It was fine. It didn't distract from the movie. There's explosions and things that were happening in the movie. So
do you wish that you could have traveled back in time to see a different time to watch it?
No, because if I would have tried, I would have inevitably ended up in the same place. So there we have it, everyone. That's a wrap on Indiana Jones and on season 1 of Seizing Valor. Season of Valor.
The first season.
Yes. So, I don't know. I guess we can, I don't know. I just want to say, I want to thank everyone who's listening, for listening, for tuning in, for sticking with us. We hope that you got something out of our conversations this season. Hope that, even if it's just one line from one of the podcast, one episode, if that managed to help you in some way, that's what we do this for. So, and we hope you'll come back to see us, season 2, and
in the fall.
Sometime in the future, we'll let you guys know, once we are off hiatus. And just wanted to say that we're praying for all of y'all who are listening.
It does get a little bit emotional for the amount of episodes and all the editing and stuff like that. It truly was an honor, and I want to echo what Zack said, that if this helped you in any fashion, we know that we've done a good job. Not from like an egotistical point of view, but just the fact of the matter that like we can help shape somebody else's life, and God's working in everybody's life, and hopefully we're able to be lights for all of you guys. And it's tough not seeing that face to face with you, of course, and only you seeing us through a screen. But this is something I pray for practically every day, and I really can't wait for the opportunities that God will provide for the people listening, and for myself and Zack. Thank you for joining us on Seizing Valor. We hope that you enjoyed our exploration on the Christian elements on Indiana Jones 5 and the Dial of Destiny. We hope that you thought it was thought-provoking, insightful. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this movie, and any other themes that you noticed in the movie that we haven't mentioned. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, comment, hit the bell icon to receive any notifications for any future episodes on our YouTube channel, or on Spotify or Instagram. You can also follow us on Spotify just to stay updated on any latest episodes, any latest going-ons, for any additional discussions too. And check out our Instagram, which is at Seizing Valor. But if you have any additional qualms or queries, please sure to email us, seizingvalor@gmail.com. I'll be on that. Your feedback and engagement are so important to us, and we appreciate your support. Can't wait for season 2, guys.
One last time for season 1, let's pray it out. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for bringing us all here today, myself, Joe, and all of us listening. Thank you for this season 1 that we've had, this a little over a year's worth of discussions between myself, Joseph, and Josh. Thank you for all the fruit that it has borne, that we have seen and that we have not seen. Thank you for the friendship it has brought between the three of us. Just thank you for every single person that's listening, and that's provided support to us through their prayers and through their participation here. We pray that you help guide us and give us rest as we're about to take this break, and to give us strength and inspiration as we head into season 2. I ask for prayers for each and every person who is listening at whatever point in time they're doing it, and for whatever intentions they need. We offer prayers for that. And just ask, Lord, time is a valuable thing. We only are all given so much of it. Help us to be able to live in the time that we are, in the season that we are in. Help us to appreciate each and every one of those seasons, the seasons of the beginning, the seasons of the middle, the seasons of the end, and the roles that we are supposed to play in that. Help us always to remember to turn and to look around and be grateful for that which you give, and remember to live our lives, regardless of it as the beginning, the middle, the end, with the destination in mind, which is you and heaven. And help us to be able to ask for help along this journey, and to realize that we can't do it alone. And so always just to turn to the people closest to us in order that we might reach our destination together. In Jesus' name we pray.
Thank you, Lord, so much for this opportunity to be lights towards other people, and pray for rest and relaxation during this hiatus time, and resting and recharge before hitting the ground running. Thank you again, God. Amen.
Have a great summer. You'll see us soon, and you'll hear from us. And anyway, bye, and peace to all of you.
Bye, guys.